Administrative panic produces truly impressive displays of incompetence when government councils face situations that challenge their carefully maintained worldviews. The Galactic Wildlife Preservation Council had spent weeks debating a crisis involving a human female who had apparently convinced 4 Nexthrak cubs to abandon their natural inclination toward recreational violence in favor of something the council found infinitely more disturbing: organized cooperation. Dr. Amy Cross stood in the center of Containment Facility Gamma 9, surrounded by creatures that should have torn her apart within seconds of first contact. Instead, the 4 cubs had arranged themselves in what could only be described as a protective formation, their midnight black scales gleaming under the harsh facility lighting, while golden eyes tracked every movement from the observation deck above. "This situation is completely unacceptable," announced Chief Administrator Vex Thorne, his tentacled Zentari form writhing with bureaucratic displeasure as he addressed the emergency assembly. "Dr. Cross has violated every established protocol regarding apex predator interaction and created a security nightmare that threatens our entire research program." The research program in question specialized in studying the behavioral patterns of creatures that made experienced soldiers reconsider their career choices. Nexthrak cubs represented the pinnacle of predatory evolution. 6 feet tall, 300 pounds of pure muscle and calculated violence, with intelligence that bordered on tactical genius and a natural disposition toward eliminating anything that moved within their territory. "She has been living with them for 3 months, continued Security Chief Kane Mills, a scarred Altarian whose 4 arms gestured nervously toward tactical displays showing the facility's defensive positions. 3 months of unauthorized contact with Class A predators that have killed 17 researchers in the past 5 years. "And yet," observed Dr. Lisa Hayes, the facility's lead xenobiologist, "Dr. Cross remains remarkably intact for someone who has supposedly been violating safety protocols with creatures designed by evolution to be perfect killing machines." The irony was not lost on anyone present. In 3 months of dangerous violations, Amy had suffered fewer injuries than most researchers experienced in a single supervised observation session. "Perhaps," suggested Amy's voice through the communication system, apparently having overheard the discussion, "the problem is not with my methods, but with your assumptions about these incredible beings." The 4 cubs shifted slightly at the sound of her voice, their movements synchronized in a way that suggested communication far beyond simple pack behavior. The largest, whom Amy had named Rex, tilted his massive head toward the observation deck with what appeared to be curious attention rather than predatory focus. What observers could not see was the subtle interplay of vocalizations and micro-movements that constituted the cub's ongoing conversation. Storm, her silver markings catching the light as she adjusted her position, was quietly analyzing the stress patterns in the officials' voices while simultaneously monitoring exit routes should the situation deteriorate. Blaze had positioned himself to cover the facility's technical access points, his orange-patterned scales darkening slightly as his body temperature adjusted for optimal reaction time. Silver maintained surveillance of the entire perimeter, while conducting what appeared to be a continuous assessment of potential threats versus opportunities for peaceful resolution. The cubs had spent their months with Amy not merely bonding, but developing increasingly sophisticated communication protocols that incorporated human linguistics, Nexthrak harmonic patterns, and hybrid expressions that neither species had previously imagined possible. Their vocabulary now included abstract concepts that challenged established theories about predator cognitive limitations, including discussions of philosophy, ethics, and interpersonal dynamics that would have impressed university professors. "Dr. Cross," Administrator Thorne called through the intercom, "you will explain your unauthorized techniques immediately." "Unauthorized techniques?" Amy replied with the sort of amused tone that usually preceded academic demolition. "Such as treating them like intelligent individuals rather than biological weapons? Such as showing respect for their autonomy and emotional needs? How shocking." "Nexthrak cubs do not possess emotional needs," protested Dr. Hayes, though her conviction seemed to be wavering as she watched the cubs' obviously coordinated behavior. "They are driven purely by territorial instincts and hunting protocols." During their months together, Amy had documented behaviors that contradicted every established theory about Nexthrak psychology. She had observed Rex comforting Blaze after a nightmare that apparently involved memories of capture and separation from his original family. She had watched Storm create elaborate artistic patterns using facility materials, arranging objects in configurations that demonstrated aesthetic preferences and creative expression. Silver had begun composing complex musical sequences that incorporated mathematical relationships with emotional themes, producing compositions that moved Amy to tears, while demonstrating intellectual capabilities that exceeded most recognized sentient species. The Cubs had also begun teaching Amy about their species' hidden history, revealing cultural traditions, philosophical concepts, and technological innovations that had been developed in secret during their captivity. They described advanced social structures, educational methodologies, and conflict resolution techniques that challenged every assumption about predator societies. Their ancestors had apparently maintained sophisticated civilizations until systematic hunting and capture operations had forced them into hiding, leading to the current widespread belief that they were nothing more than dangerous animals. "Really?" Amy asked. "Rex, would you care to comment on that assessment?" The largest cub vocalized in response, a complex series of harmonic patterns that the facility's translation system struggled to process before settling on. Incorrect classification, emotional complexity. Present, request for accurate recognition of cognitive capabilities. The silence that followed was so complete that the facility's life support system seemed unnaturally loud. The translation itself was a breakthrough that the officials failed to appreciate. The Cubs had been working with Amy to refine the facility's linguistic interpretation algorithms, teaching the systems to recognize the emotional undertones, contextual references, and cultural nuances that had been lost in previous translation attempts. Their communications were far more sophisticated than the crude interpretations suggested, incorporating layered meanings, cultural references, and emotional subtleties that required deep understanding of both species' communication patterns. "Did that predator just critique our research methodology?" Security Chief Mills asked weakly. "That individual just explained that your research methodology is based on flawed assumptions," Amy corrected with obvious satisfaction. "Rex and his family have been trying to communicate with researchers for years. You just never bothered to listen." Family. She called them family. As if apex predators were capable of forming emotional bonds rather than temporary hunting alliances. The bond between Amy and the Cubs had developed through a gradual process of mutual trust building that began with Amy's decision to approach them without weapons, barriers, or defensive postures. She had entered their containment area armed only with genuine curiosity and respect for their intelligence, offering gifts of food and entertainment while making no demands or impositions. The Cubs had initially responded with cautious interest rather than aggression, apparently recognizing that her behavioral patterns differed fundamentally from previous researchers. Over time, their interactions had evolved into genuine friendship, characterized by mutual protection, shared experiences, and emotional support. Amy had learned to participate in their social grooming behaviors, to appreciate their artistic expressions, and to contribute to their problem-solving discussions. The Cubs had adapted their communication styles to accommodate human cognitive patterns, while teaching Amy to recognize the subtle indicators that constituted their native language. They had developed hybrid cultural practices that incorporated elements from both species, creating a unique family dynamic that transcended biological boundaries. "Dr. Cross," Dr. Hayes said carefully, "Nexthrak cubs are solitary predators. They do not form family structures or social bonds beyond basic survival cooperation." "Tell that to them," Amy suggested. "Storm, would you like to explain your relationship with your companions?" Another cub, slightly smaller than Rex, but with distinctive silver markings along her scales, responded with vocalizations that translated as, "Pack, bond, transcends survival/emotional attachment to companions/protective instincts toward chosen family unit." Storm's response barely scratched the surface of the emotional complexity that Amy had observed among the cubs. They engaged in sophisticated relationship dynamics that included conflict resolution, emotional support during stress, celebration of individual achievements, and collaborative decision-making processes that required consensus among all family members. They had developed inside jokes, shared memories, and cultural traditions that strengthened their bonds while providing psychological stability in their artificial environment. The cubs had also begun demonstrating protective behaviors toward Amy that extended far beyond simple alliance. They monitored her health, adjusted facility conditions for her comfort, and provided emotional support during her occasional periods of homesickness or professional frustration. Their protective instincts included not just physical safety, but psychological well-being, creating a family dynamic that provided security and belonging for all members. She just described love, Amy interpreted. Specifically, the love she feels for her brothers and her human adopted family member. Impossible, Administrator Thorne declared, though his tentacles had stopped writhing and were now hanging limp with confusion. Apex predators do not experience love. According to who? Amy challenged. According to research conducted from behind barriers by people who assumed they were studying mindless killing machines? Maybe your research conclusions were predetermined by your methodology. The third cub, whom Amy called Blaze due to the orange patterns decorating his scales, vocalized what the translation systems interpreted as previous researchers approached with hostile intent, defensive responses, natural to perceive threats. Peaceful contact produces different behavioral outcomes. Blaze's observation highlighted a fundamental flaw in the facility's research methodology that had profound implications for interspecies contact protocols throughout the galaxy. The standard approach of studying potentially dangerous species through containment, observation from protected positions, and controlled interaction scenarios created artificial conditions that guaranteed defensive responses. Subjects naturally interpreted such approaches as threats and responded accordingly, creating data that supported predetermined conclusions about their aggressive nature. Amy's alternative methodology had demonstrated that approaching unknown species with respect, vulnerability, and genuine interest in communication produced entirely different results. By making herself available for friendship rather than positioning herself as a researcher studying specimens, she had created conditions that allowed the cub's true nature to emerge. Her willingness to accept risk in pursuit of authentic relationship had revealed capabilities and characteristics that years of conventional research had failed to detect. He is explaining that when you approach someone with weapons and treat them like a dangerous animal, they respond accordingly, Amy translated. But when you approach with respect and genuine interest in communication, you get cooperation instead of conflict. This is impossible, Mills repeated, though he was studying his tactical displays with obvious bewilderment. Our containment protocols are designed based on documented Nexthrak aggression patterns. Your containment protocols are designed based on provoking and then documenting aggressive responses, Amy corrected. You created the behavior you expected to find. The fourth cub, Silver, the smallest of the group, added her own perspective. Isolation, harmful, social deprivation, creates distress, companionship, essential for psychological health. Silver's insight into the psychological effects of isolation represented another breakthrough that the facility's staff struggled to process. The cubs had been subjected to conditions that constituted systematic psychological torture, according to the standards applied to recognized sentient species. Their behavioral problems, previously attributed to natural aggression, were actually symptoms of prolonged social deprivation and environmental stress that would have produced similar symptoms in any intelligent social species. She is telling you that solitary confinement makes them miserable, Amy explained, and that companionship is not just preferred, but necessary for their mental well-being. Mental well-being? Dr. Hayes repeated, as if the concept were alien. Nexthrak cubs do not have mental health needs. Dr. Hayes, Amy said, with the patience of someone explaining obvious concepts to willfully ignorant audiences, these are intelligent, emotionally complex beings with psychological needs every bit as sophisticated as yours or mine. Treating them like biological specimens has been causing them psychological trauma for decades. The implications of this statement sent shockwaves through the observation deck. If Nexthrak cubs possessed emotional complexity and could suffer psychological trauma, their treatment under current protocols constituted systematic abuse of sentient beings. This cannot be accurate, Administrator Thorne protested desperately. If these creatures qualify for sentient protection under galactic law, Our entire research program becomes subject to ethical review. Good, Amy replied cheerfully. Because your research program needs ethical review. Rex vocalized again, his tone carrying what could only be described as diplomatic formality. Request for recognition of sentient status, demand for ethical treatment protocols, offer of cooperation in exchange for respectful interaction. He is formally requesting recognition as a sentient being, Amy translated, and offering to participate in research voluntarily if treated with appropriate dignity and respect. They want to cooperate? Mills asked with obvious disbelief. They want to be treated like people instead of specimens, Amy corrected. There is a significant difference. Storm added her own perspective. Voluntary participation, preferred, mutual benefit, achievable, knowledge sharing beneficial for all parties. She is proposing collaborative research, Amy explained. Instead of studying them like objects, you could work with them as partners. The concept was so revolutionary that several observers required medical attention for stress-induced system failures. Dr. Cross, Dr. Hayes said carefully, how did you achieve this level of communication? Our previous attempts at contact resulted in immediate aggressive responses. Simple, Amy replied. I introduced myself politely, asked permission to share their space, and treated them with the respect due to intelligent beings. That is all? That is everything. Respect, patience, and recognition of their intelligence and autonomy. Blaze contributed. Human demonstrated trust, vulnerable approach. Appreciated, reciprocal trust, granted based on respectful behavior. He is explaining that I earned their trust by showing trust, Amy translated. I made myself vulnerable by entering their space without weapons or barriers, and they responded by protecting rather than attacking me. You made yourself vulnerable to apex predators intentionally? Mills asked with the expression of someone witnessing supreme madness or supreme courage. I made myself available for friendship, Amy corrected. There is a difference. Silver vocalized agreement. Friendship recognized, protective bond established, human accepted into family structure. She is confirming that they consider me family, Amy said with obvious warmth. Not prey, not threat, not research subject. Family. The cubs had begun moving closer to Amy, their formation shifting to accommodate her position while maintaining their protective perimeter. Their coordination was flawless, their intent unmistakable, and their capability to carry out their protective duties absolutely terrifying. Dr. Cross, Administrator Thorne said nervously, what are their intentions regarding the facility staff? They have no hostile intentions toward anyone who treats them respectfully, Amy replied. But they have very strong opinions about people who threaten their family or deny their rights. Rex's vocalization carried unmistakable warning. Protective protocols, active threats to family member will face consequences, peaceful, coexistence preferred, but not guaranteed. He is establishing boundaries, Amy explained. They will not tolerate threats to me or attempts to separate our family. Beyond that, they are perfectly willing to coexist peacefully. And if those boundaries are violated? Mills asked, though his tactical training had probably already provided the answer. Then you would face 4 highly intelligent, emotionally motivated, tactically coordinated apex predators defending their chosen family member, Amy replied matter-of-factly. I would recommend avoiding that scenario. Storm added emphasis. Defensive capabilities, significant coordination advantages, considerable motivation to protect family absolute. She is explaining that they are very good at protecting what they love, Amy translated. And they love me. The observation deck had descended into the sort of chaos that military facilities experienced when established procedures proved completely inadequate for current circumstances. This situation is completely outside our operational parameters, Mills admitted with obvious frustration. We have no protocols for dealing with apex predators who consider humans family. Maybe, Amy suggested with characteristic human directness, it is time to develop new protocols based on cooperation rather than containment. Blaze vocalized enthusiastic agreement. Cooperative frameworks preferred mutual benefit, achievable traditional containment methods harmful and unnecessary. He is volunteering to help design new interaction protocols, Amy explained, based on partnership rather than imprisonment. They want to help redesign our security procedures? Administrator Thorne asked with bewilderment that bordered on system overload. They want to help create procedures that acknowledge their intelligence and respect their rights, Amy corrected. Security based on mutual respect rather than force. Silver contributed. Educational opportunities, welcomed knowledge sharing, beneficial, desire to contribute to improved understanding. She wants to teach you about their species, Amy translated. From their perspective rather than yours. Nexthrak cubs want to become research consultants? Dr. Hayes asked weakly. Nexthrak individuals want to become partners in advancing understanding between species, Amy corrected. There is a significant difference. The cubs had arranged themselves around Amy in a formation that managed to be both protective and welcoming, creating clear boundaries while remaining open to peaceful interaction. This changes everything, Administrator Thorne said finally, his bureaucratic mind struggling to process implications that extended far beyond his facility. This changes everything that needed changing, Amy agreed. Which was most of everything. Rex's final vocalization carried formal declaration. New era of cooperation, initiated, partnership with respectful humans, welcomed evolution of interspecies relations begins with recognition of equality. He is announcing that this is the beginning of a new relationship between our species, Amy translated, based on mutual respect and recognition of each other's intelligence and dignity. And as I watched Amy surrounded by her chosen family of apex predators, all of them working together to establish unprecedented cooperation between species, I realized that humans possessed something that other civilizations often overlooked in their sophisticated methodologies. The wisdom to recognize that intelligence and emotion came in many forms, and that respect could overcome any barrier between beings willing to see each other as individuals rather than threats. Over the following days, as news of the Nexthrak intelligence revelations spread across galactic networks, the cubs began receiving visitors from across known space. Scientists, diplomats, military strategists, and cultural experts all arrived to witness firsthand what many still considered impossible. This is unprecedented, declared Ambassador Nex Vale, a Zentari diplomat whose purple skin reflected diplomatic excitement as he observed Amy's family through the reinforced barriers. Never in recorded history has a species been reclassified from non-sentient to diplomatic status based on demonstrated capabilities. Maybe, Amy suggested from her position among the cubs, that says more about the limitations of your classification systems than about the rarity of intelligence. Rex vocalized agreement with diplomatic precision. Intelligence widespread throughout galaxy systematic ignorance prevents recognition/classification errors harm innocent beings /comprehensive review of species status recommended. He is suggesting that there are probably many other species whose intelligence has been overlooked, Amy translated, and that a galaxy-wide review of species classifications might reveal widespread errors in your assumptions. The implications were staggering. If the cubs were correct, galactic civilization might have been systematically ignoring or exploiting intelligent beings for centuries based on flawed assessment methodologies. Impossible, protested Dr. Kane Weber, though his conviction had been steadily eroding since Rex's critique of his research. Our classification procedures have been refined over millennia. Your classification procedures have been consistently applied, Storm corrected through the translation system. Consistent application of flawed methodology produces consistently flawed results, bias confirmation. Rather than objective assessment, predetermined conclusions prevent accurate recognition. She is explaining that doing the wrong thing consistently does not make it right, Amy interpreted. Your methodology produces the results you expect because you only look for what you already believe exists. Blaze contributed his analysis. Observational bias creates self-fulfilling prophecies/hostile approach generates defensive responses. Misinterpreted as aggression/peaceful contact, reveals cooperative capabilities previously hidden. He is pointing out that, when you approach beings with weapons and treat them like dangerous animals, they respond defensively, Amy explained. But when you approach with respect and genuine interest, you discover their true capabilities. The visiting experts were taking extensive notes while processing the uncomfortable reality that their scientific methods might have been fundamentally flawed from the beginning. Dr. Cross, Ambassador Vale asked carefully, What would the Cubs recommend for improving interspecies contact protocols? Amy consulted with her family through complex vocalizations before responding. They suggest starting with the assumption that intelligence exists, rather than the assumption that it does not. Approach new species with curiosity, rather than suspicion. Look for signs of consciousness, rather than focusing on differences from established patterns. Silver elaborated. Intelligence manifests differently across species/diversity of cognitive expression, natural/standardized testing, inappropriate for varied biological systems/cultural context, essential for accurate assessment. She is explaining that intelligence does not look the same in every species, Amy translated. Your testing methods are designed for beings who think like you, not for beings who might process information completely differently. This could revolutionize first contact procedures, observed Dr. Lisa Hayes, her scientific excitement finally overriding her institutional resistance. Instead of categorical assessments, we could develop adaptive evaluation protocols. Or, Amy suggested with characteristic human directness, you could just talk to them and see if they talk back. Rex vocalized what appeared to be humor. Simple solutions often most effective, complex procedures sometimes mask simple truths. Conversation reveals more than testing protocols. He is suggesting that sometimes the obvious approach is the best approach, Amy laughed. Revolutionary concept in academic circles, I know. The Cubs had begun demonstrating their teaching capabilities by conducting informal education sessions with visiting researchers. They explained Nexthrak cultural concepts, shared environmental knowledge, and offered insights into predator psychology that challenged every established theory. Their educational methodology is remarkably sophisticated, observed Professor Dana White, a human educator who had arrived to assess the Cubs' pedagogical skills. They adapt their instruction style to match each individual's learning preferences. They are natural teachers, Amy confirmed. They understand that effective education requires recognizing how different minds process information. Storm was currently explaining complex ecological relationships to a group of environmental scientists, her vocalizations creating detailed descriptions of ecosystem, interactions that revealed knowledge far exceeding current academic understanding. Ecosystem management requires recognition of all participants. Every species contributes essential functions. Shark removal or subjugation of any element creates systematic instability/cooperation, maintains environmental balance. She is explaining that healthy ecosystems depend on cooperation between all participants, Amy interpreted, including apex predators, who play crucial roles in maintaining ecological balance. They understand systems theory, marveled systems analyst Jake Moore, advanced ecological modeling that accounts for complex interdependencies. They live systems theory, Amy corrected. They understand cooperation because their survival depends on it. Blaze had begun working with military strategists, demonstrating tactical concepts that revolutionized their understanding of coordinated operations. Unit effectiveness increases exponentially when individual capabilities complement, rather than compete. Emotional bonds create communication efficiency beyond technological solutions. Trust eliminates hesitation delays in critical moments. He is teaching them that teams work better when members support each other rather than trying to outperform each other, Amy explained. And that trust makes communication faster than any technological system. Emotional bonds as tactical advantages, Minister Frost muttered, his strategic mind clearly recalibrating fundamental assumptions about military effectiveness. The Cubs had also begun collaborating on technological innovations, offering biological solutions to engineering problems that had puzzled researchers for decades. Observe natural efficiency principles, Silver demonstrated, using her claws to create mechanical models. Biological systems optimize energy expenditure/technological applications possible through biomimetic design/cooperation between organic and artificial intelligence beneficial. She is showing them how biological efficiency could improve their technology, Amy translated. Biomimetic engineering based on predator anatomy and behavior. They are solving engineering problems through biological modeling, observed technology specialist Rex Stone with obvious amazement. Problems that our best artificial intelligence systems could not address. The most remarkable development was the Cubs' establishment of communication networks with other potentially intelligent species throughout the galaxy. They had begun teaching communication protocols to beings previously considered non-sentient, creating an expanding web of interspecies contact. Network expansion proceeding efficiently, Rex reported during one of the daily briefings. 17 species now demonstrating previously unrecognized communication capabilities, systematic intelligence suppression confirmed across multiple systems/liberation movement gaining momentum. He is reporting that 17 other species have begun demonstrating intelligence, Amy translated with obvious satisfaction. The liberation movement is spreading. Liberation movement? Ambassador Vale asked nervously. Recognition movement, Amy corrected. Beings helping other beings discover their voices and demand appropriate recognition. The Cubs had also begun composing music, their harmonic vocalizations creating complex compositions that moved listeners to tears. Their artistic expressions combined mathematical precision with emotional depth that challenged conventional understanding of creativity. Artistic expression emerges from emotional complexity, Storm explained during one of her musical performances. Creativity requires both technical skill and authentic feeling. Beauty results from harmony between precision and passion. She is explaining the relationship between emotion and art, Amy interpreted. Something about technical skill needing emotional authenticity to create genuine beauty. They are philosophers, whispered cultural analyst Vera Lane. Apex predators are creating philosophical discourse about the nature of beauty and creativity. The Cubs' philosophical discussions had attracted attention from academic institutions across the galaxy. Their insights into consciousness, ethics, and the nature of intelligence were revolutionizing philosophical thought. Consciousness emerges from complexity of interaction, Blaze articulated during one session. Self-awareness requires recognition of others as equally valid ethical behavior. Follows from understanding universal vulnerability, moral responsibility increases with capability. He is developing ethical frameworks based on consciousness theory, Amy explained. Something about moral responsibility being proportional to capability. That is more sophisticated moral philosophy than most established civilizations manage, observed ethics professor Dana Gray with obvious amazement. But perhaps most importantly, the Cubs had begun establishing formal diplomatic relationships with galactic governments. They appointed ambassadors, negotiated treaties, and participated in interstellar policy discussions as equal partners. Nexthrak Confederation formally established, Rex announced during one diplomatic session. Sovereign status claimed, diplomatic recognition, requested peaceful coexistence treaties available for voluntary adoption. They have formed their own government, Amy translated with pride. And they are offering treaties based on mutual respect and voluntary cooperation. A predator confederation with diplomatic standing, Ambassador Vale mused. This changes the entire structure of galactic politics. The Cubs had also begun working directly with human organizations, forming partnerships that leverage their unique capabilities in coordination with human innovation and adaptability. Human Nexthrak cooperation produces superior results, Silver observed during one collaborative project. Combined capabilities exceed individual limitations/complementary strengths, create synergistic advantages/partnership model applicable across species boundaries. She is documenting that humans and Nexthrak working together achieve better results than either species working alone, Amy explained. Proof of concept for interspecies cooperation. The transformation had attracted attention from the highest levels of galactic government. The Supreme Council was preparing to vote on formal recognition of Nexthrak sentience and diplomatic status, with implications that would revolutionize interspecies law. The vote is scheduled for next week, Ambassador Vale reported during his final briefing. Early indicators suggest overwhelming support for recognition. Good, Amy replied. My family deserves official acknowledgement of what has always been true. The Cubs had also begun training other humans in their communication and cooperation techniques, sharing their insights about building trust across species boundaries. Human potential for interspecies cooperation exceptional, Rex noted during one training session. Natural ability to recognize intelligence regardless of form, trust, diplomatic skills, transferable to other species, Contact OS training program expansion recommended. He is saying that humans are naturally good at recognizing intelligence in others, Amy translated, and that these skills could be taught to help with first contact situations across the galaxy. As the formal recognition ceremonies approached, the Cubs had transformed from classified specimens to respected members of galactic society, contributing their knowledge and capabilities while maintaining their protective bonds with Amy and their growing circle of friends. "This session is adjourned," Administrator Thorne announced hastily. "We need time to consult legal experts and establish protocols for diplomatic relations with previously classified non-sentient species." "Good idea," Amy agreed. "While you are developing new protocols, we will be here demonstrating that friendship between species is not only possible but mutually beneficial." Rex's final statement carried both warning and invitation. Transformation of relationships begins with recognition of equality, partnership offers benefits to all parties, respect generates loyalty, while oppression creates enemies, choice between cooperation and conflict belongs to galactic leadership. "He is giving you a choice," Amy translated. "Partnership or continued conflict. Cooperation or resistance. Recognition or consequences." As the observation deck emptied in bureaucratic confusion, Amy remained surrounded by her protective family of apex predators, living proof that intelligence and emotion transcended species boundaries when approached with respect and genuine recognition. The Cubs had made their position clear. They were dangerous when threatened, protective when loved, and invaluable when treated as equals. And humanity had once again demonstrated its remarkable ability to see potential where others saw only problems, to choose understanding over fear, and to build bridges across seemingly impossible differences through the simple recognition that intelligence deserved respect, regardless of the form it took.